Hi, I'm Ivan from Divergent Beats, and we're truly honored to have with us today one of the most exciting new voices in the UK music scene. Welcome, Be Like Milo. Thanks so much for taking time for us.
No worries. Hi guys. Yeah, I'm Be Like Milo, based in London. So yeah, nice to meet you all. Thanks for having me.
So let's start from the very beginning, okay? So who was Michael before Be Like Milo?
Um, so I actually started. My degree was in maths, so I did a mathematics degree.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I went into finance. So kind of did that for
Whoa.
a while, bit random. But
Yeah.
through the whole time, I was sort of like writing music and very much into music.
Mm-hmm.
Through my job, like I joined a work band, so I kind of got that feel for like playing on stage and like music and performing. And then within the last sort of like 5 years, I'd say, I started to really start to focus on like songwriting and making more of an effort of becoming a music artist. And then with the last few years, I kind of decided to take the jump to become full-time music. And now that's what I do. I'm kind of like giving it my best shot to sort of like become the next Chapel Roan, something like that.
I
Hopefully it won't
love
take
that.
10 years.
And you're like you started, or better, the first music that you put out was Pieces. That was a really sort of indie acoustic vibes, like and the
Yeah.
lyrics were quite raw and personal. And now the music keeps being like raw and personal, a little bit cheeky sometimes.
hmm
But what was the moment that you realized, you know what, I wanted to involve the sound of it and
Yeah.
change it completely?
Um, I think there's like a few things, I guess. One is my taste in music has changed quite a lot from when I started to write music. And I think the industry and what music is available has changed quite a lot. So the kind of, I guess, like the world of music has shifted. Um, the way that I write music has changed. So originally I wrote music with my acoustic guitar. I'd say like the first five songs I wrote was just me, acoustic guitar, strumming chords and kind of coming up with lyrics. Whereas now I sort of work with producers or I work in writing sessions where we just start like an electronic beat, and I feel naturally it like guides me in a different path in terms of what I want to write, and then naturally the outcome is different. Um, and then thirdly, I guess since I've been performing a lot more like live, I've realized the songs I want to write are songs that I want to perform, not necessarily the songs that I want to listen to or get my thoughts out with. So I've naturally sort of lent towards more like upbeat, uplifting songs. Maybe the lyrics are still quite personal and meaningful and deep, but I try and use like these electronic sounds or kind of beats to make them a bit more energetic and fun. And then I enjoy performing them, which is kind of like the main goal, I guess.
And like you said, you change your journey throughout the music, the way that you're writing, the sound, and more. But there was any artist or any specific song that you said, you know what? I wanted to change that and I wanted to do my music.
Yeah, there's definitely a song that stands out to me. So the song that kind of turned it around for me, if I think about, I guess, how it takes the lyrics and makes it into a more of a song that I want to dance to. There's a song "Runners High" by Muna, and that was quite a
Ooh.
pivotal song for me, in that it starts has a really long intro. The lyrics I think are really cool. They're about a relationship, about kind of like getting out of that relationship, realizing it's kind of toxic, and then figuring out you're better off without. But there's this like specific drum beat slash crash cymbal crash that they use throughout the song. And I kind of, the moment that hit when I was listening to it, it transformed the song for me and it became suddenly so energetic and powerful. So I think that song kind of showed me what it was to use electronic capabilities to transform lyrics that I've written. So it's kind of like, yeah, one song that I think stands out for me is Runners High by Muna.
And how was the reaction of your fans, like passing through pieces to something so cool that you do now? Like, not
Yeah,
that it was not cool
yeah,
pieces, don't take me wrong, but
it's
like,
uncool. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. No, I get
it's totally different.
Yeah, they've been great. I think some of like the OG people who love pieces, I actually have sent them some of my recent tracks like in advance of them coming out, just to kind of get a sense of a vibe of to like, do they like them? I kind of do that with my friends or my fans, is like try and send them songs, have them listen to them, and then figure out, is this working? Control Alt Delete and Pieces are probably my two most different songs that I've ever written. Pieces was about my first heartbreak, my first boyfriend that I broke up with, and it was the first song that I released. Control Alt Delete is almost taking the joke of what is trying to date in London and making it into like a silly, catchy song. So they're so different, but they're my two most popular songs. So I think it just goes to show that people want both. Like I can give people a sad boy era, but I can also give silly camp era. And I feel like that's what I like about
Love
music,
it.
is giving everything and just writing lots of different stuff.
You had a gig last weekend, isn't it, in London?
Yeah,
How
Friday.
was to how was to perform like both of them? Like, what was the biggest difference in that?
So my set, I've like specifically designed it so that it's like a journey. So the
Okay.
first part of my set is kind of more singer-songwriter-esque, I suppose, in how I perform it. The songs and the way that I sing are a lot more sort of like heartfelt and meaningful. Maybe a bit of synth, but nothing too much behind it. And then I've written a song, which actually is the song that comes out tomorrow, called
Yeah.
Endless Youth. Um, and that song is in three parts. The first part is a piano ballad. The second part is a hyper pop kind of electronic sounding center part, and then the third part is techno, just like 100% techno with no lyrics. So I kind of use that as my pivotal song in my sets, where it takes from like more of a singer songwriter and then pushes it through to techno. And then once I've kind of got that techno song out of the way, it's very much into sort of like the more harder hitting dance electronic, a bit more sort of like angry, silly, as opposed to like sad. So yeah, that's how it kind of works through my shows at the moment.
And you said a lot of your song that you wrote about was for a heartbreak that you had, but a lot of your songs is really connected with your personal experience with the LGBTQ plus community and the
Mhm.
relationship. That was a sort of conscious decision, or it just came out like that, like from your heart?
Yeah, I think so my first few songs I wrote were all very much I wrote as like a diary for myself.
Hmm.
Um I wanted to kind of get my thoughts down and process loss or feelings that I had. So a lot of my earlier songs are about specific heartbreaks or relationships that I've ended or mental health struggles that I've gone through or things about my family and friends. Um, and then when I came to deciding to do this debut EP as like more of a project, it then I started to be a bit more specific as to the reasons why I wanted to then write the music. And it was to write music which was then more, I guess, marketable or could be played or people would want. Um, and so, although I then try and keep the lyrics quite heartfelt, the reason for doing it has shifted from being my own kind of source of therapy and writing something like it's a diary to writing something that I've experienced, but trying to make it relatable to others, and try and create sort of like music that way. So I feel when I wrote pieces that I wrote it just for myself, whereas the stuff I'm writing now is it's about myself, but it's for other people, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
But ultimately, I try and write songs that I still want to dance to, because at the end of the day, like I have to perform them, and if I don't like them,
Yeah,
then
it's a
it's not
sort of
going to come
therapy,
across
isn't
right.
it?
So yeah, it's definitely. And now I'm kind of like this merged point where I write stuff about things I've experienced or things I'm feeling, whether it's good or bad or silly or angry or camp or queer, whatever the theory or like the theme is. But yeah, it's more for other people now than it would be in the past, which was just purely for myself in my own bedroom.
Like, I love to listen like to musician because then it's a sort of diary, isn't it? A journal that you just write it down and you sort of therapy. Like, it is a therapy, like
And
for ourselves.
100%. Um, 100% is therapy. And I think what's really interesting now is like I'm currently working on promoting songs that I wrote a year ago. And so my mental state and my experience has changed so much since then that I sometimes find it quite odd, like recording a video to promote a song which I wrote when I was incredibly sad, and now I'm not sad at all, or at least I'm not in the same kind of sad. And it's quite difficult because you're trying to promote this kind of like, I'm hurt and I'm really affected by something. But in some cases, you move past that. So my song, Not the One for You, I recorded that, I think probably like now 2 years ago, but I wrote it 10 years ago. It was one of the first songs I ever
Wow.
wrote. And I sat in it for ages, but I'm nowhere near the place that I was when I wrote that. I was really immature. I was really unaware of what relationships were. And now I've had more experience. I look back and the lyrics are quite funny that I thought that I felt so deeply into this. But yeah, so that one's from 10 years ago I wrote that. So yeah, things do change.
And did you ever written a song that was so personal, so raw and personal that you said, I don't want to release it, and then you change your mind?
Uh, to date, no. I think as a
No.
person, it's like to date, I haven't. No, maybe in the future. I'm really open as a person. So like if I've going through struggles or if I've got things I need to say to people, I generally say it like quite easily. So with the songs I've written, there's never been one that I've been scared to release for the content of what's in the song. More so just like worried to release it in terms of how it's going to be received as a song. So it's not really the lyrics that are stopping me from releasing it, more just making sure it's ready to go out and, to the world. When I did write pieces, I remember really quickly, like, I wrote it super fast. I wrote it within like 10 to 15 minutes, I think. Just one day, sat on a table
Wow.
and I just poured my heart out and everything kind of came together quite quick. And I immediately sent like a voice memo to my ex who I'd written it about to see if he liked it and see if he could resonate and how he felt about it. His response was super strong. It's funny because we dated for 4 years, and he kept asking me to write music for him. And I feel like I can only write music when I'm sad. And so, because I was in a good relationship, I felt for 4 years I struggled to write music. And the moment we broke up, suddenly, like this song just came out straight away.
Yeah.
So I thought it was quite funny. I sent that over to him, and he's been really supportive of it. So yeah, I think there's people I like to check my songs with before I send them out, but in general, there's nothing that I've written that's so deep or meaningful that I've been scared to let people hear it.
And if you could pick like a lyric from those songs that you wrote, what would represent you more at the moment?
Mm. It's like, it's a good question. I think it's quite hard because there's so many lyrics. Like, I
Yeah.
think one one that stands out and it's quite like to the point is "Romance is Dead," and I think that line in itself summarizes the whole EP, where it's like I'm pretty bored slash fed up or frustrated with I guess chasing people who don't want to be chased but act like they want to be chased, or processing this kind of like cycle of like dating lots of different people, toxic relationships, trying to figure out who you are sexually. Um, so I think Romance is Dead just summarizes to me the concept that um, I feel a bit lost in that space, like a bit helpless. And I've kind of like told myself, I joke that I date guys for the plot because at least then when a
Yeah.
date goes bad or I get heartbroken, it's all in the aid of music. So it like gives me this reason to get heartbroken and to lose in that space. But yeah, I think for me, Romance is Dead, something that sticks out as like a silly thing to say, but I also think it's kind of true, especially in London at least.
Oh,
Maybe.
I completely agree with. So Control Delete Alt, it has this really underground electronic music and
Mhm.
this really pumping up and the lyrics. I just, even if you said, it's a little bit silly, I just found that amazing because I lived in London, so I know how it's to date in London. When you perform there at your show, what was the feeling like the experience out?
Yeah, for me, like it is a silly song. Like I I wrote it kind of in the shower. I remember one day I was showering and this like like kind of beat kind of came in my head. And then I also thought about Control Delete as like a computer command. And then I just thought about, hang on a minute, what if I could just Control Alt Delete boys? Like that would be great. So that's kind of how it came about. And I remember like it didn't really start like it wasn't meant to be a song. I never sat down to write something. I just came out of the shower and started singing it to my friend. We both got it stuck in our heads, and I thought, hang on a minute, this is quite catchy. Maybe I should do something with this. So when I perform it live, it's one of the ones where I don't stand there and I think back to the experience, or I don't stand there and think back to like how I felt when I wrote it. I just have fun with it. Um, so there's like a little bit of a dance that I do with part of the song, which is like very simple. This. But I really enjoy teaching people that and having fun with the crowd, and like similar to Hot to Go with Chapel Roan. One day I hope that I've got this like huge audience of people, like an army of dancers, just doing this really simple, silly dance to a silly song. So yeah, I think with Control Alt Delete, I say the word silly. I do think there is more to it than it just being a silly song, but I like to have fun with it and be silly while I'm performing it. So that's kind of how I get, the feeling when I'm performing that song.
Do you see yourself like your music fitting into a specific scene, or at the moment you're saying you're just doing something,
Hmm.
whatever it feels like, that it's just like, you know what, don't care. This is my music. I do whatever.
Yeah, I don't know if like it fits within a genre per se. Like I want to keep it within the queer space. So I've got like a plan of like three EPs that I want to sort of work on, and each of them have their own themes or concepts, but they're all within like this realm of queer experience and developing myself as a queer person. In terms of like the genre, it's always going to be some sort of pop music, and it's always going to have some sort of electronic synth to it. But I do like to push the boundaries with my kind of interest in music and push it towards, like there's parts of techno. A phrase that I've learned recently is this kind of like electro clash, um, which I think I've listened to a bunch of songs from that genre, and that really excites me. Um, and it steers me down different directions. So then when I'm writing a mini project of say 4 songs, I'll try and keep it within sort of like a realm. But then I'll just get really excited in the studio and think, oh, I really want to put into some techno bit here. So I do. And it makes the songs a bit random, and it's impossible to sort of like cast them into a genre, and playlisting can become a bit of a nightmare. But I'm producing music that I'm proud of and I'm excited by. So yeah, I think generally speaking, I just call myself an alt pop artist, because I think that's best described just alternative pop. And I take an influence from, say, 80s synth, techno. They're probably the two main ones. But anything that's sort of like sad boy electronic is kind of the vibe. So like Robin, Churches, Muna are kind of my
Yeah.
core influences, but then I take other bits from all sorts of people, like in techno, Charlotte DeWitt or Emily Lenz, um, Griff, Charlie XCX. I think they're all girls that I've mentioned as well. But yeah, I struggle to
Yeah.
find male males that I kind of like aspire to. It all seems to be like females dominating the spaces that I look up to.
And if you could collaborate with any of those that you mentioned right now, what would be? Who would
Um,
be?
So I didn't even mention the person I'd want to collaborate with. This
Oh,
person would
okay.
be insane. I don't think it'll ever happen. But Rina Sawayama is probably the person that I've always had as my number one inspiration. Like the way that she performs, the genres that she crosses, the ways in which she's kind of like led her career, and the people that she's worked with. I think she's just incredibly inspirational. So yeah, I'd love to work with Rina on a bunch of tracks or even one track. That would be a dream for me.
Never knows. So I think that, yeah, you get inspired from your personal experience, the music, the sound, and more. But do you have any playlist that you listen to that maybe there is one song that will surprise us and we'll be like, oh my God, he actually listened to that?
Weirdly enough, I don't listen to playlists. I don't really have a playlist. I use YouTube Music, which is a bit odd. I feel like no one uses it. But I
No.
just use the kind of there's just this forever refreshing 50 song playlist that an algorithm makes for me, and I just go to that. In terms of music that I think would surprise people, though, is I know I've mentioned sort of like techno, and I've mentioned this kind of EDM realm and singer songwriter. but at heart, I'm an emo. Back when I was a teenager, I'd listen to screamo bands, sort of like The Used. Um, I mean, My Chemical Romance is kind of an obvious one to go to. Flyleaf, Paramore, 30 Seconds to Mars, like just those classic kind of rock emo bands. And then obviously with like things like Bring Me the Horizon now. So an artist that I've had come up on my playlist recently that I think people might not expect is Linkin Park. Um, and again, I listen to that stuff regularly. So you would never guess from the music I make, but there's influence within my music of artists. So 30 Seconds to Mars heavily inspired my track Dead. It was like 30 Seconds to Mars and Billie Eilish were the two kind of main influences for that track. And yeah, I definitely want to take a bit more sort of like, pages from the books of, I'd say like bands like Enter Shikari, where they're electronic rock. Um, yeah, they're one of my favorite bands as well that I listen to quite regularly.
What was the biggest lesson that you learned about yourself through making music, but also on the music industry?
I think I've learned that I'm quite weird, like strange. My taste in music is very eclectic, and I think what I've learned is that that's probably what makes me different. Um, there's not many singer-songwriters who throw in techno and then hyperpop and all like electronic music and things like that. So I think that's one thing I've learned is that my taste is quite broad, but that's what I enjoy. And the second thing is definitely like I need to just learn to be myself. Um, I played at that gig I spoke about last Friday, and it was in a straight venue. But I had an idea in my head that I wanted to do outfit changes through my set, even though it was just like a pretty casual gig. So I had my vest on, but underneath it was like a leather crop top. And then I had my friend on the sideline with this kind of cream bra, essentially. Um, and so even though I was in this space where I guess that wouldn't necessarily be normal or accepted, I kind of committed myself to that plan. So the first one was quite easy, just taking off the thing and revealing this kind of like leather bra. But then taking that off and then quickly switching into this other one and throwing on this other outfit, it all came to me quite like naturally in the moment. But I think in the past, had someone said to me, "Would you feel comfortable to stand in front of, 100 people in a woman's like sports bra?" I definitely wouldn't have. So I think I've developed a lot in terms of my self-confidence around self-expression and my queerness. And that's something I've definitely learned through performing and writing music.
Tomorrow is coming out your new single, Endless Youth. I know that you mentioned a little bit at the beginning, but can you talk through it? So, what is about? And by the
Yeah.
way, I love the cover of it.
So the artwork, firstly to reference on that, like all the artwork I've used for my album covers have all kind of been photos that I've already had sort of in my camera roll. And I sort of scroll through and try and find one that I think fits the energy and the vibe of the song, to keep it as low budget as possible. And I think that photo, I was really lucky to have that. So yeah, I'm excited by that image. I think it summarizes the song quite well. Um, the song itself is probably one of the hardest songs I've ever written. And I know how you asked about, is there a song that I've struggled to release in terms of like the what it's about and the feelings behind it. Because I did write that one in one of the most sad states that I've been in terms of dating and having someone do something like to the relationship. Um, so it's a song about heartbreak. It's in three sections, as I explained. So there's the piano ballad, which is the first part. There's a hyperpop section, and then there's the end kind of techno. And the way that I wrote it was to express kind of the the path that you take when you go through heartbreak from a relationship. So the first part is this kind of like sad, quite lyric heavy account of what happened. And it's to kind of show that moment in which you find out something and you feel incredibly sad and down and hurt. Then the second section is kind of this sort of a bit angry, but questioning mindset around lyrics. and it's to give like the kind of sense of confusion and when you're kind of a bit frustrated and trying to figure out what happened and why it happened. And then the third part is this full techno part, which is very much to show the turmoil of the heartbreak and kind of like the crazy, angry, just kind of screw this attitude that comes at the end of it before you can then fully move on and process. So yeah, it's a really cool song. It's quite long. It's like 5+ minutes, which is a pretty long song. But I think every section is needed in the way that it was written to allow to kind of tell that whole story.
You write the music, you produce the video clip, like basically you do everything. How did you pass from writing the song and then creating the video clip? There is like a line between that, or you just, you just sleep and you dream, like, okay, I want to do that video for that song.
The way, yeah, so I do pretty much everything myself at the moment. My friends help me a lot. I've got some really cool friends who help with, filming and things like that. But for music videos, for this one, for example, I kind of came up with the concept of my head around location and colors and feeling. So all my songs have a color to them, kind of how my brain works. But so Endless Youth is very much like dark black and purple, and it's shades of purple. So there's more of like a lilac purple start. It goes through to this kind of like more neon club purple, and then this very like dark, almost black purple. So the music video from that point is sort of like, okay, I can sense it being in sort of like a warehouse, something that's quite spacious and derelict, similar to the album cover is on the beach with the sand, and it's about this sense of like tons of space and feeling so small within that space and just feeling quite lost and helpless. And so from that concept, I then start to think about what could the music video be? What shots do I need? And then how can I then edit it? So yeah, it's a lot of work, but I found myself really excited by it. And that's where I'm at with Endless Youth is I've got like a concept of like where it would be and how it would look, but I still need to find the location and get the clips and then edit it all.
Okay, Michael, thank you so much for your time. It's been amazing to
No
speak
worries
with
at all.
you.
Thank you for
And
having me.
do you have any message for your fans?
I guess like the most important thing for me is the debut EP. It's called Broken Record. It's coming out in a few months. I'll be sharing sort of more specifics on my socials around that. It's 6 songs. The next one coming out is Endless Youth, which is tomorrow. And then there'll be 2 more songs to kind of wrap up the EP. So yeah, that's kind of my main focus at the moment. And yeah, thank you for listening to my music. And message me if you ever want to chat or let me know anything about the music or what you want to see more of. Love to hear from people. So yeah, message me on my Instagram or things like that.
So thank you so much.